What's up, guys? My name is Jack Wright, writer, producer, director and presenter of my brand new theatre vlog series of Theatregoing Revival. Well, make that not brand new, but of course it's been around for, unbelievably, as of this year, now 10 years to celebrate its 10th anniversary. You join me here in the studios of my production company, Jackpot Button Lewis Productions, filming the trailer for the upcoming, of course, celebratory 10th series anniversary, and make that 6 in, of course, in the ones that I've done collectively over the last 10 years. But in the lead up to, of course, the celebration of 10 years of doing this series from later on this year in the month of November, I managed to do, from earlier on today, ask some questions from the people who have been working alongside me, not just from people that I may have worked with for over the last 10 years or so, but for some of you that may not have known about how I first came up with the idea to this series, to other memorable moments I've had from doing this series, and also as well, I think what has to be one of my favourite shows out of all of the other ones that I've covered so far in this series, all are going to be explained in this particular video, so I hope you enjoy. Well, I mean, that was, I think, the very obvious question to start off with. How did I get the idea, how did the idea come about for this series? Well, I was obviously a huge, passionate fan of theatre, and not just, of course, straight plays, but musical theatre in particular, I would say. And it's strange, actually, because weirdly enough, with this series, I know that a few shows that I already had planned to see when I first started coming up with the idea for this series. I think I started watching the black comedy film from 1996, which I know marks its 30th anniversary as of this month in particular, of Trainspotting. And I know that even though it's quite a dark, of course, film and all about, you know, heroin addiction and drugs and everything, but it's more than just that. And I know that with how I got the idea for that, since I know the name of the series, of obviously not just the series, but also having been inspired by the title of the film, Trainspotting. I know it had almost kind of like a double meaning in there. I know it was obviously named after the novel of the same name by Irvine Welsh, who wrote it originally. But for me, it was also just the way it was. It went mostly down to the iconography of the series, because, like with my logo that I have right now for the Revival series, I know it's got the signature orange colour background, which I know was very reminiscent of the colour of the national rail tickets you used to get. And I know that in the early series, I do remember I went on trains quite a lot, and I was obsessed with trains when I was really young. So, I thought, because I never knew that the term actually even it seemed to exist, theatre going, and I thought it sounded very similar to train spotting, and I know that's also kind of used as a metaphor for basically travelling to and from shows, basically, if you've been to see a theatre show in particular. So, and to anyone who goes to the theatre often, they're normally described as theatre goers, and I know that I'm an avid theatre goer myself, and it was quite simple, really, how like I said, I already got the name of the series. It kind of just just popped into my head, and yeah, using, of course, the revival part, which I have used for the last few years, because when I first started doing the series, I know that it was going to be a little bit something new for me, because I would not normally review or cover in a visual aspect, reviewing particular shows. So, but I was heavily inspired by loads of other fellow theatre YouTubers as well, the likes of which I know that I happen to be very good friends with. Perry O'Brien was one of them, who actually made me discover loads of musicals, and I know he's also met loads of famous people from the world of the theatre industry. But not just that, he's obviously met loads of celebrities through the world of film, television, the music industry as well, and yeah, I mean, well, as I said, I mean, there's nothing else I could really to say that inspired me with just how to come up with the idea for the show, and yeah, it just basically all started from there, really. Well, it's so funny actually, because even though unbelievably it's been 10 years since I first saw the show, and it was actually a off West End run of the production, to my knowledge, it was the last 5 years from Jason Robert Brown. I unbelievably had no idea what the show was all about when I first heard of the title of the show, but I weirdly discovered one of the songs from the show through an old theatre performer friend of mine. Her name was Ellie Gillett, and she sang the song, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was something about upward struggle, I think. I mean, I could be terribly wrong, but I know that it was one of the songs which was sung by Kathy Hyatt, the female character in the show, along with her partner Jamie Wellerstein, and it was like I said, a completely new musical work to me when I first heard of it initially, but I then, before seeing the show, I then saw a film adaptation with Anna Kendrick and also Jeremy Jordan, who both of them were amazing performers. I know that they've already had experience performing in loads of shows on Broadway, especially in their younger years, for Anna in particular. And I know that Jeremy Jordan came fresh from the very popular Disney musical of Newsies, which, excuse me, happens to be a very close, underrated musical work. I had my late grandma, Esther Armstrong, introduce me to from a very young age, and I think actually I remember that I was introduced to the film version with Christian Bale, and now the late, great, of course, Robert Duvall, who played Joseph Pulitzer in the film, and to find out that this story was all based on true events, the Newsboys' strike of 1899 in New York City, was it was completely fascinating, and I never knew that something all to do with a strike to obviously with the story of the Newsboys obviously having to pay more just to get their papers to then obviously deliver them and just obviously sell them on the street was is an incredible story and everything. But obviously slightly going off topic, but the fact that when I heard that both Samantha Barks and Jonathan Bailey were going to be playing those two particular characters in the show was incredible, because I already knew Samantha Barks from the musical of Les Miserables, playing Eponine. I know she also played her in the 25th anniversary concert at the O2 Arena, and then also bagging the role also for the film adaptation as well, which I know was her first big role, theatre role in any film really. So I know that during that time that she also did a children's TV series on the Disney Channel here in the UK of Groove High, where she played a former performing arts student of Zoe Meyer. I know that she had her hair dyed as well. I'm not sure if she either dyed it or also she had it as a wig. She had auburn hair and she put on an American accent, and very different to how she sounds in real life, I know that. And the same for Jonathan Bailey. I actually discovered him unbelievably. I think as well as Groove High, that he also did a few other shows that I rarely knew about, but after him being in, of course, in Groove High, I was aware of his musical talent and his background. I know that he'd been performing at a very young age, and the same for Samantha Barks, because I know that she was in the talent show I'd Do Anything when they were trying to find a new Nancy in a revival production of Oliver. Lionel Bart's Oliver, and I know that she may not have got the part, but she got to the final. But I know that one of the judges in particular was Sir Cameron Mackintosh, who was producing Les Miserables for the 25th anniversary concert, and I know that he obviously had a soft spot for her, and doing the same thing, even though she finally got to play the role of Nancy in a UK touring production of Oliver many years later. She got the surprise announcement from Cameron to play the role of Eponine in the film version of Les Mis, and I do remember her words very well on some of the behind the scenes interviews of the film, that at that moment her life just changed forever after when she was performing in a few other shows, not just in the West End, but also I know that she was doing like loads of other local performances and productions to where she's based in Laxley, in of course in the small island of the Isle of Man there. But no, it was a very special show when I first saw them both together, and especially I know that both of the two of them have had incredible careers throughout the last almost like 20 years or so, actually, which I know sounds so crazy, but it's actually true, because Jonathan Bailey has had huge success playing Theatregoing in the film adaptation of Wicked. I saw him last year play Richard II in a Shakespeare production of the Bridge Theatre, which unfortunately I didn't have the chance to cover in the last series, but also to have seen Samantha Barks on many occasions. I know 10 years ago I saw her do her first ever solo tour as an artist, outside of being in a musical, and then I saw the last 5 years with her and Jonathan that same year, a few months later. So it was absolutely incredible. I was just in absolute awe of that young woman, of course, as a performer, and I've had the pleasure of following her career, even though that there was some times when I was young I actually done some things that I felt like I shouldn't have done, which was a bit embarrassing, especially after when she performed after her UK tour date in Norwich, actually, and I remember it so well, and I asked her to sing a song with me, and it was right after when she did a show, and my head was just like all over the place, because I was just so enamored by her presence. I just was in love with her because she was such a beautiful young performer, and I really did like her. I actually thought she was a very sweet and down to earth person, and I just loved her personality, and she was like one of my first, I think, musical theatre crushes as well, actually, if you don't mind me saying that there. But yeah, it's crazy to think that actually was the very first show that I covered all those years ago here on my series of Theatregoing Revival. Wow, what a question. That is a very good question, but I can definitely answer that one. I've always been intrigued to discover new musical work out there, and I think that with some shows that I've covered, even though I sadly reviews obviously didn't materialise from that either, if I didn't get enough footage, or I just didn't have time to actually put the whole review video together. And I've always had an interest in up and coming new musical work, like especially I think a highlight from last year and the last series was Saving Mozart, which is an incredible new musical work written by Charlie Eglinton that I had the pleasure of actually seeing with my very good friend and fellow musical theatre fan, despite her being, of course, with the medical condition of cerebral palsy, as she's had for many years, and she has to be in a wheelchair, of Ella Gretorix, who I know that we have got so much, like mutual interest when it comes to musical theatre, and she actually asked me to go and see it with her from sometime, I think it was in the summer of last year, and the last series, I think, of Theatregoing Revival here. And I know it was an amazing story based on true events of the women in the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, the very famous Austrian classic music composer from Salzburg. And I think I remember it was it focused on the older sister of Wolfgang, of Nana or Mozart, and the hard, and of course I think obviously he always was quite pressurizing on him, his father, of course, that being Leopold, but also the unique thoughts of the then future wife-to-be of also Constanza Mozart there, and also I think as well his fellow Italian rival composer of classical music, also that being Antonio Salieri there. I was just trying to remember his name. It is, as I said, I know it's so strange because I only got a chance to see it once in from last year, and but the way that the story was told in a modern way, which I know I've seen many musical works, especially even before it, like especially with one of my favourites being Six the Musical still at the moment, as it has been for the last few years. And I think also it has to be said that another one that it's just basically, if it's something that if it's based on real life historical events, which I know seems to happen to be quite a common thing now with certain musical works. I know Les Mis was like that, because even though it was a novel, it was loosely based on events also in front of a real rebellion that happened, the June Rebellion, which was some kind of it was a follow-on from the French Revolution from a decade beforehand. And also, it's also very funny because the French Revolution itself was depicted in a modern way in the lead up to that, and someone who started the chain of events that led to the events that happened of the French Revolution, that being Jean de la Voir Saint-Remy and Kate the Marie Antoinette playlist, which I remember seeing that show from now 2 years before then, Also at the very same theatre, the other palace where I also saw Saving Mozart. And weirdly enough, also with that particular show, going back to Saving Mozart, that was one that really inspired me to do a cosplay based off one of the famous costumes that the character wore, and he wore this real beautiful, like I think it was like a tailcoat with like real fancy sleeves, you know, of the period in 17th century style. And to obviously, I know, going slightly off topic with this question, I always go for shows that if they have got just something, you know, maybe unique about them, that's what makes me want to cover them into like a future episode of Theatregoing, because as I've just said again, last year I actually went to see loads of brand new works of musical theatre, and even though that I sadly no reviews didn't materialise from that because of other things going on in my personal life, I still had the pleasure of seeing some amazing shows with some amazing people that have had involvement in it as well, with the likes of the Britain's Got Talent former winner from a few years ago, Sydney Christmas, playing Cruella de Vil, the villain in 101 Dalmatians, the musical, which I thought was absolutely incredible, because I know that that woman has got one hell of a voice. You know, she's got an amazing set of pipes when it comes to singing like some big songs. And but also as well, I think I know that another show that I went to see last year, the Pratt Pack, which involved 4 incredible, of course, and legendary entertainers and TV personalities, the likes of Bradley Walsh and also Shane Ritchie, also Brian Connolly and Joe Pasquale, all them together singing classic jazz songs and basically being a comedy variation of the Rat Pack, was just brilliant. It was laced with so much, you know, hysterical comedy moments, and some of it was improvised, I know, and I like a bit of improvisation in there, especially when they you know, they bounce off each other, and I think that is and that's always a real master thing to do. Like, you know, it's like a masterful skill to try and do that, and especially when you've got you know, people like that, you know, who have been seasoned entertainers and comedians for many years, and when they come together just to do a show that can make people just laugh and also cheer and just, you know, like just make people happy and bring some lightness to like the dark times in, of course, our everyday lives, is it's such a privilege to see that. And especially, I know that was a Christmas present that I got from my parents a few years ago, so I'd have to most importantly have the utmost thanks for them gifting me that memorable experience, even though I had to wait unbelievably about 2 hours to actually meet the performers after the show, because they were just doing their own different things, of course, while we were just kept waiting inside the theatre auditorium at the live Con Exchange in Cambridge, where it actually happened. But it was still one incredible and memorable night for that particular reason. No, not at all. I mean, it's crazy how much that I have done, or how long I've done this series for, and for it to now hit the milestone of 10 years. That, of course, if it were to be an actual wedding anniversary, I would get some kind of tin gift, actually, because that's actually the thing that you would get, actually, tying in with that, if it was to be a wedding anniversary. I'd always associate it with that, with not just the number, but no, as I said before, I can't believe that I'm already 10 years doing this series, and it doesn't feel like that it's been, you know, that long at all. It's just flown by so quickly. But to have seen all of the shows that I have seen. I know I've covered one or two on many occasions. I mean, one in particular which I know that sadly I couldn't open this new series to was the football play Dear England from James Graham. It's first time going on a UK tour, and I saw it from earlier on this month in February. And and of course with a different cast as well, and with people playing the lead role of Gareth Southgate and Dr. Pippa Grange. But it was still amazing though to get the response that it got, and even though it is of course a straight play, but it talks about a sport that us people here in England obviously are really passionate about, and we're quite obviously quite cynical over it, and I think that was very cleverly written and depicted on stage. And I know it's going to be very interesting because I know that they've been working on a TV adaptation of the same play for the last few years or so, which will come out later on this year. And I'm really excited for it. I know that I had a great memory of actually meeting James, the writer of the show, a few years ago at the What's on Stage Awards, when it was nominated for a few awards on that particular night at the London Palladium. And I went up to him, and I vividly remember the conversation I had with him, saying that after being nominated for all of these awards, that it sadly didn't walk away with any that were nominated for. But I said to him, can I just say that you were robbed tonight, and I feel like that with your play, it's obviously it's really close to my heart, you know, for being an avid England football fan, as I've been for over 20 years actually this year, more particular, because the first major tournament I remember was the 2006 FIFA World Cup in Germany, and then I kind of, you know, over the years, after the poor results we've had in following of course tournaments, and even not even to mention not even failing to qualify for the 2008 Euros as well, and I remember that very well, and especially losing 10 years ago to Iceland at Euro 2016, and I when I heard that a smaller team than us actually can beat us in a major tournament, I mean, I honestly wanted to give up my hope in, of course, supporting the team. But it was going to be my last chance when I saw the 2018 World Cup in Russia. And then after the incredible penalty shootout, when we finally won the penalty shootout at the World Cup for the first time, and for the first time in many years since Euro 96 against Spain in the quarterfinals, that was a pivotal moment, and as I said before, it's amazing that to have that experience, but to especially, you know, have that input on a show which has also really touched people, when especially it gives them a privilege to be a part of something that is obviously very impactful to a load of people, which I know, as I said, we love our sport over here in our country, and it's not just football, it's rugby, it can also be even also the big sporting events with the Winter Olympics just gone by as well. I know that when of course these big sporting events come around now and then, even the British Grand Prix in Formula One, for being a big fan of that as well. It's always amazing when you get the opportunity to, you know, come together with fellow people and to relive that experience, but also in a theatre play, especially with Dear England, was really cool. But no, as I said, once again going off topic there, but no, it still astounds me how long I've been doing this series for, but It's always been something I've been so proud of for the last 10 years, and I have covered some truly amazing shows on this series, and I'm sure you've got a question to ask about my favourite memory out of all the shows, and well, of course, if that's one of those particular questions coming up, I think that's going to be quite a challenging question for me to answer. That's all I'm going to say for that. I knew it! I just knew it, honestly. As I said before, I felt like I could read your mind with that one. Oh, my goodness. Well, oh, my goodness me. As I've said before, as I have to say again, this is so difficult. I mean, I have been so fortunate enough to have not just seen some truly amazing shows and productions over the last 10 years of doing this series. I mean, looking back, as I said earlier on about, you know, the first one I covered of the last 5 years, it was actually at the St James Theatre, actually, before it became the Other Palace, because a few years later it then became the early first theatre, where they brought the UK and West End production of Heathers the Musical to, and I know I covered that shortly after, when it went to the Theatre Royal Haymarket there in 2018, and but that was a very big moment for that production, because it was very well received, and I know that it was very popular among, of course, fans alike, and but out of all of the shows that I have been to see, it is so hard to try and think of a favourite memory, but I have to say, as I mentioned earlier on, meeting James Graham at the What's on Stage Awards, because I I very vividly remember that my friend, once again Ella Gretorix, she asked me to see if I was available to join her there to actually see the award ceremony, and I was familiar with the event, but I never thought I'd get the opportunity to go there. And this was basically like one of the big theatre award ceremonies, like just below the Olivier's, which is like the top one, which I know that's coming up obviously this year in April, amazingly celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, which is quite amazing. And I'm hoping, I mean, it would be incredible to even go there and even consider going there for this year if she manages to ask me to get tickets for that as well. But it's so difficult, and I'm not trying to stall here on purpose here. It's every single show has had its moments for favourite memories, which I look back on like most fondly, the most fondness out of all of them. And I feel like that one that really was special for me, I honestly have to say, was to experience, I think also as well, and as I mentioned with the show earlier on, I think for me in particular it was because it's been a long time coming for the show to come to London. I think it has to be the Troubadour Wembley Park theatre production of Disney's Newsies the Musical. A few years ago, when I heard the news that they were finally bringing the show to the UK after many years, and hearing the amazing story by the director Matt Cole, who went on amazingly to get an Olivier Award himself for Best Director and Choreography, and just the show on a whole, and especially with the theatre space itself, making it being so immersive, and especially when I remember so vividly and fondly when the show started, the fact that all of the performers on stage who were dressed up as as Newsies. They one came down a zip line, and my face, as soon as I saw this person go down the zip line, it was like, oh my god, like, you know, my mouth was literally wide open in shock because I weren't expecting that. But then just to see all the other performers going around and interacting with the audience, and they were giving out some, like, you know, of course, spare newspapers, which unbelievably were like programs in themselves from the separate ones as well. And to have those like little tear-off ones that they had in the show as well. And I still have one of those today as well, which was very useful for even me then attempting to cosplay the character of Jack Kelly, because he was a very relatable character to me, not just because he had the same name as me, but he was a dreamer. He always wanted to go to somewhere, you know, that had always been always on his mind right from the very beginning of the story, that being Santa Fe, which is one of the big songs in the show. But the whole experience and the dance, choreography, the way the show was performed on stage, it literally had so much to it, which, I mean, I look back on it and I vaguely remember when I last saw the show, because I managed to got to see it twice. I went to see some fancy night performances where you could dress up as a character from the show or being loosely inspired by some of the characters in the show, and I did my own version of Jack Kelly. And I remember that particular night when I met, I actually got to ask Matt Cole the question of, due to how popular the show was, would there be a UK touring production of the show in the future? And I know that he said there would be a little break, and he said he was pretty confident you would see Newsies again in the future. And even though we haven't heard about it since the show production finished, I know that he's gone on to do be the director and he was the choreographer, again, for the new jukebox musical production of Here and Now, the Steps musical, which that show in itself also, which I went to see tour around the UK after I saw the gala night performance from 2 years beforehand as well, was incredible. The fact that, because the band were there as well, all the band members, because, you know, the show was all based off their music as well. And but yeah, I mean, as I've said before, I mean, and I know that I've never covered the event itself on my series yet, but I'm hoping to do it for its 5th anniversary as of this year, MusicalCon as well, and to have had the amazing memories of going there for the last 4 years, and to also, not to boast or anything, but to also be the current winners also of the lip sync battle competition, when my mum Samantha Wright was a very special moment, because I'd been competing in that very same competition for like the previous 3 years, and I have competed along some great other group acts and also solo acts, and to finally get to be acknowledged for the hard work that went into the performance that I did, especially also dressing up in cosplay as the characters as well, is it was a huge reward and a huge payoff for when that happened. But honestly, as I said before, it is so hard picking out favourite moments from all of the different shows that I've seen. But there you go. I feel like that I don't think nothing is going to top from seeing the What's on Stage Awards at the London Palladium, I would say. Well, as much as I want to say much about or what I can say for the upcoming series, I can't say too much, but all I know is that the first not just series but episode of the 10th anniversary series is going to be a show that I have long waited to finally see. Which also does involve trains as well, unbelievably, which I know, funny enough, also, as I mentioned back with Disney's Newsies, the musical, it's also at the Wembley Park Theatre, Troubadour Wembley Park Theatre, and actually I was I was there not too long ago in that same area near obviously where the England football teams play at Wembley Stadium, and also at the Wembley Arena, where also I covered separately the UK tour of Gladiators, the very famous BBC game show, which I know is still one of my favourite programmes so far at the moment. I know it's had an incredible successful revival for the last 3 years or so, since it's in about halfway through its third series, and they've already confirmed a fourth series which will start filming later on in the summer. And yeah, of course, I've already, outside of this series, I've got loads of other ideas, which I mentioned recently on a bumper channel video update video. And I'm really looking forward to be covering the FIFA World Cup this year, of course, in the summer, and hopefully England going all the way this time around, after the heartbreak of going out on the quarterfinals of the last World Cup, which even though I thought was still amazing, and where the location where it was, but it was so bizarre to see that tournament take place during the winter season, because of how hot it was over there in Qatar, where it was first or last hosted at. So, no, but the first show that I've got planned, which I'll be seeing from unbelievably later on this week, actually. So of course I'm very busy and productive so far with this upcoming series, and I've already got my eyes on seeing loads of other shows at the moment, and it's also I'm also in a production myself as well, for the first time in a few years, of doing Andrew Lloyd Webber's Evita with Ely Theatre Company, who have been given a new renamed, of course, they've been given a refurbished new name and new look from Campaign Amateur Theatre, CAT for short, and they've really gone through quite the change identity-wise for, of course, for what they're doing. I know they've got some very exciting shows planned for as well as from when we do the show in May, even though I've started rehearsals. But they've also got another production just around the corner from later on this year, which I am really looking forward to also be a part of as well. And but yeah, but to anyone who may be watching this right now, and of course, if you been of one of the many, of course, close supporters of this series, I just want to say thank you so much for sticking with me. I know that some particular reviews have actually surprised me over the last few years. I think one of them in particular, which I never thought would be that popular, was Only Fools and Horses, the musical, which my old school friend Ryan Hutton was in, that he had got his first theatre big break in, performing in the industry, and I saw him a few years ago in another play called People, Places and Things at the Trafalgar Theatre, with Denise Gough playing the lead role of Emma. And the fact that he's performing with, you know, very successful and well-known like figures in the industry is incredible. Because I know also along with Paul Whitehouse, who worked with Jim Sullivan on Only Fools and Horses the musical, I mean, he is an incredible person, and I know that I've been a big fan of his work with Harry Enfield, and he's also worked with loads of other comics as well, and I know that the fact that Ryan has had the pleasure of performing to loads of big celebrities because of how popular the show was at the time, even though it's now kind of dwindled and just kind of been, it's already done its run now, but for him to have been the original Rodney Trotter, the very first person to play that role, is I think a brilliant achievement for him. I've still yet to do it, but I'm so proud of how far he's come, and also with his theatre company, Bag of Beard Theatre, and him writing another own work by himself. He's also done a lot of that as well, which I'd love to cover on this series in the future. I think that would be very special. And no, I still can't believe that it's been 10 years since I've done this series, but I hope that of course for the next few years, I know that it's an amazing milestone that I've done so far, but all I think I've got to say, I think for the next 10 years or so, I think hopefully will not be the hardest. Looking forward to hopefully this show will go on even when I'm no longer here on this planet. Well, thanks very much for watching, everybody. This exciting and exclusive new Q&A, of course, video that I've had most of the people work here on my theatre vlog series of Theatregoing Revival have done, especially for the 10th year anniversary series, which once again is kicking off from the month of February, and I am really looking forward to be covering one exciting musical production to kick off the brand new series. But we're still a while away from celebrating the 10th year anniversary, not until November, but I hope that you'll still join me in the lead up to that, and covering many different shows. And not just that, also there might be a few other events also popping up here and there from when we go into the next few months of this year of 2026. Once again, if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, comment down below on your thoughts on this video, and don't forget also, I have still got plans also for a subscribers Q&A video that if you have got any questions that you would like to ask me, and of course outside of this series, and you'd want to know a little bit more about myself, I'll be more than welcome to answer them for you. And of course there will be a post also on my official Instagram page also of Real Next Gen King Henry VIII, and you can obviously once again put your questions into me, and I'll get to them and put them in a video hopefully as soon as possible. Until then, thanks very much for watching, and until I see you on the very first episode of the 10th anniversary series and 6th series of Theatregoing Revival, see you very soon.